We saw in the previous video how chains of then could be used to handle a sequence of asynchronous function calls that are all based off of promises. But you don't have to chain then together, at least not in a straight chain. So one thing I didn't talk about in the previous video was if I run that code, you'll notice that it just sort of sits here and hangs until I Control C. And the reason is because it opens a database connection and it doesn't actually close it. And the database connection might return results at some point in the future, might emit events, and JavaScript really doesn't know. So if I want the program to exit normally, I have to actually close, call close on the database connection after I'm done with it. So when do I actually do that? Well, it's got to be after I get the results out of the database. And let's say I want to do it here, for example. But in order to do that, I actually need access to the pool object because I'm going to be calling pool.close. So how do I get pool in here? Well, I could change these return values to return an array or an object with multiple properties and sort of pass pool along at the same time as this query result through here and then through here and then through here. And that starts to get really complicated. Or what I could do is something like this. So inside of here, I have a pool object, and I can actually, instead of returning this value as a promise, I can chain off of that. So let's move this into here. And then when I get the results of my query coming back, I pull out the record set and then I iterate through it. And then after that's done, then I can call pool.close. So the structure is a little bit more complicated, but not too much. So let's go ahead and try that. And displays the same results, but it exits when it's done. You can also save intermediate results. So for example, let me undo this. So here was the original version of it. Now this result equals db connect. This is actually the pool object promise. And so I can go ahead and execute this code and then add a .then here. So after all of this is done, I'm going to execute a then clause. But then inside, I'm going to do result.then pool again goes to pool.close. So I can add as many then clauses to the same promise object as I want, and they're all going to get executed when this promise resolves. So let's go ahead and execute this. And once again, this exits just fine. So what about errors? We haven't talked about that at all. So let's go ahead and say I make a mistake, or for whatever network reason, I can't actually connect to the database server. What am I going to get if I run that? Well, unhandled promise rejection warning. So basically this says that I had an error somewhere along the chain, and I'm not catching it. So in order to catch it, you just add a catch clause. You can have multiple catch clauses if you want, but typically you'll put one at the end and it will take an error, and then you can do whatever you want with the error. So you could call a callback with it, or you can just console.log it, or console.error it. And that will also get rid of this warning. So here we go. Connection failed to connect to the database. not found. If I fix this and I introduce an error somewhere else in the chain, so for example, here I'm going to not only console.log, but let's say x equals 1 over 0. Actually, that might not actually throw an error. Yeah, so that doesn't actually throw an error. It just returns something that I think it's not a number. But let's go ahead and explicitly throw an error. Right. So the error got caught by the catch. Let's actually verify that. So we're going to verify that the error got caught by the catch. But the problem is that when I got an error here, that caused all the thens after this then to get skipped. So if you're executing thens, you keep executing thens one after the other. But the minute that you hit an exception or an error, it skips the thens and only executes the catches. And since I'm just returning the thing from there, I never actually execute this then clause. So I don't close the database, and so it doesn't go away. But I could fix that easily by also adding result.then pool here. So either way, I'm going to close the database connection. So let's run it this time. So I am in the catch clause where I dumped the error. So I did execute the catch. And I also closed the database, and so the program exits normally. So once again, it may or may not seem like it, but it's very much in a similar, it has a similar feel to working with sequential code, even though I'm sort of mixing things that are happening synchronously, like the line after line in main, with things that are happening asynchronously, like when these thens actually execute and the next one in the chain executes. And so it's fairly flat code. I can go in and I can edit stuff in the middle. If you look at the callback hell version of the code, imagine I wanted to change something in the middle. That's going to be affected by what's on the outside and what's on the inside. And like if I want to add another thing between this callback and the callback ahead of it, I have to sort of wedge that in and reformat it and make sure everything matches up. It's a lot easier working with a flat sequence.